Okay, I'm going to try and keep this under 25 minutes. It is Tuesday, December the 6th. I haven't done a video blog in a while, video post. A lot has happened, but I think most people are aware of that. So the things that have occurred. So I guess we should just go ahead and get to the meat of the different issues. On Twitter, I've basically talked about what I really believe is the inevitable, what is coming. So my focus has been more on how we should get our minds right. And I'm quite sure that some of the things that I've said, for those few people who are following what I'm saying, some of the things that I've said probably seem sort of contradictory. Talking about black people, still talking about Americans, talking about resistance, and yet I'm not really talking as though resistance is going to stop what's coming from coming. And all that's true. I don't believe that resistance is going to stop what's coming from coming. I could be wrong, but I believe that the most probable outcome is the one that we really need to start preparing for. And I've been talking today about preparation education. And I've been aiming a lot of what I'm saying at black people, even though I have a feeling that not a lot of black people are listening. I also have a feeling that what I'm saying really is speaking to black people. And yet it's not just speaking just to black people, of course. On my Twitter post, the main thing that I've got on my little Twitter webpage is serve the needy, because I think that's going to be really central, really key. So why am I saying the things that I'm saying? What do I mean? Well, I'm going to try to talk about those or elaborate on those in a way that might be easier to understand when it's not restrained by 140 characters. First thing is that I do believe that this is going to be tough on black people, but not necessarily tougher than what we've experienced in the past, but tougher than what those of us who are alive have experienced, most likely. I think it's going to be tough. I think it's going to demand from us that we deal with some unfinished business in our own communities and our own selves. And the primary thing has to do with education and what I mean by education. Now, I'm using my own sort of personal etymology of the word education, which I'm confident is accurate, which is that the word is derived from two Latin words, educatus, which basically roughly means the way of leadership. And there was a book written by Machiavelli, which was written to his prince. But it was really written to princes, which were at that time called dukes, because the word duke means Lord, leader. And means like the way out of, the way from, the way. So I just took those two words, educatus, as the root for the word education. So I'm not talking about just scholarship, learning lots of things, even though I'm not separating learning things from education. When Machiavelli wrote his book, For the Prince, basically it was about the way of leadership. Leaders, even to this day, lean very much on learned men, and they are also required themselves to be learned, to be lettered, to be able to read, write, think. But it isn't just the accumulation of a bunch of facts. It's mindset. It's to be able to lead oneself, to be composed and clear and open to information and knowledge, with the end purpose to be able to lead. If you can lead yourself, you can lead others. And also, a very important part of education in leading is if you can lead yourself, you can also follow, which is highly, highly underrated virtue. To be able to lead is to be able also to follow, because some people have very difficult time following, but they want to lead. Their hands are unsteady, and yet they want to be able to lead. Just because they can influence others. Now, the other thing that I talked about was political power. Like, what is political power? And I started out with some negatives, which is sort of a Latin way or a logical way, let's say, of going about understanding something, is to understand what it isn't. Political power, in my opinion, is not money. And the reason that it isn't money is because really, political power controls money. It isn't money. If you were to use like an image, a metaphor, political power would be like the brains and money would be like the hands. Political power isn't numbers. By numbers I mean numbers of people. Like the size of your army is not political power. If political power were the brain, the numbers of people that you're able to have at your beck and call would be like the legs. Political power is education. And at the root of education is preparation. And at the root of preparation, almost indistinguishable from it, is self-confidence. Now, that's something that, all you have to do is sort of look in social media, especially on Twitter, and you sort of see something that, if you look, sort of stands out. And that is that people quite often, especially black people, I would say, you see a sort of a they should do this and they should do that kind of an attitude. They need to do this. You even have, black people saying, well, Black Lives Matter needs to do this. Black Lives Matter needs to do that. And I often think to myself, who are you talking about? Them. Them. And you get the same from people who are sort of into politics, but who are sort of like armchair generals, and they're constantly talking about them. Them who? Obama, Congress, them. Oh. Switching back to black people, I would say, without really any kind of hesitation, is that at the root of education is self-confidence. It's something that, as someone who has worked as a teacher and worked with, black kids and all sorts of kids who are difficult kids, that was my specialty, that the root of a lot of problems is simply self-confidence. And when one has sort of like an inability to deal with problems in a way that's effective, at the root of it is self-confidence. Or you could say the flip side is, at the root of it is self-doubt. They need to do this and they need to do that and they don't treat me right. And all this, at the root of it is self-confidence. So even though what I'm saying sounds sort of abstract and touchy-feely, it really is not, because what I have found through experience in working with youth who have numerous problems of all kinds, at home, physiological, neurological, emotional, is that the one thing that seems to have a profound effect, it's not always effective, because just things coming from one person alone don't necessarily change a situation. However, what I've found is that praise, encouragement, along with teaching, praise and encouragement, along with support and learning, have a profound effect on a person's behavior. And in our community, I believe, and this is my opinion, that one of the things that we lost during slavery, and we have a hard time getting back, is praise and encouragement as a way of educating our youth. And I would say that those two things are, in fact, essential. They are necessary. And if I were to have like a real criticism of the education system, it wouldn't be what they were teaching. It would be more how they were teaching it. In other words, just giving people facts and figures and learning how to, learning different facts and this, that, and the other. That's only a part of education. And in fact, it is not necessarily the most important part. As important is the cultivation of self-confidence. And in the public schools, what one often sees is that the traits that, let's say, a white boy exhibits, if they're aggressive or if they're, sort of ruthless, or if they're, those two things, let's just say, that those things, even though they may find themselves being punished or reprimanded if they break the rules, quite often what you'll find is it's a half-hearted punishment, because those qualities are seen as leadership qualities and praised and encouraged, even if they're just, minute. But those same qualities in black boys, let's say, are demonized and punished much more quickly and with much more veracity, with much more energy, with a more wholehearted feeling, like this person is a thug. This is thug behavior. And not only are they punished by the school, they're also reprimanded by their own community for having these same qualities that, when you find them in white boys, are actually praised and encouraged. one might say, well, aggression and ruthlessness are not qualities that should be encouraged or praised. The point of the matter is that they in fact are qualities that should be praised and encouraged, but not just for one group and not for the other. Because at the root of praising these qualities is the development and cultivation of self-confidence. And so the one group develops self-confidence and the other develops self-doubt behind their very same qualities, which are by the overall community at large, black and white, considered leadership qualities. Now, in black culture, as it were, the way in which youth are often dealt with is through a kind of a reprimand system, sort of like tough love. Tough love is what you did. You know, it's like a, sort of a variation of the dozens. You know, sort of like a kind of tough love. Oh, I know that you really wanted to do such and such and such. I mean, it's just an attitude that even when it's conveyed in a gentler fashion, still is the same thing. It's like guilty until proven innocent in your own community for displaying qualities that would be considered by both white and black as being leadership qualities. Like, you should be grateful for anything that you get. Well, there's truth in that, but it isn't necessarily meant in the same way, as opposed to the other side, the white boys, who it's not a matter of being grateful for what you got. This is yours, go get it. This is yours, go get it. And you hear some of that at certain points in times in the black community, but it's more aimed at people once they're adults. Go get it. Whereas the whole 12 years that they've spent going through their development as a child, that's not the message they've been getting, unless it serves the goals of white people. I don't know how else to say it. If you're on a team, you know, if you're in a business where the bottom line is the white people, or serving the white people's system, then those things all of a sudden flip around. Once you have accepted a sort of subordinate attitude, then the call is to pick up these qualities and go with them, when they in fact haven't been cultivated in you by either the white people or the black people. Now all of a sudden you're supposed to magically get these qualities. And quite often what happens is, because those qualities haven't really been developed, people don't feel like they can just go get those things out in the open. They have to get them in covert ways. Any way you can. Because at the base of the person is self-doubt, not self-confidence. It's a mental attitude that's been cultivated. And I see this, black educators have the attitude that, well, we need to be, the problem is that they're just too lenient on our kids. All this wishy-washy stuff. We need to be tough on our kids. Well, no, that's not in fact the problem. The problem is that they encourage and praise their own, but not yours. And then they get you to buy into the same thing with a vengeance. That no, what's needed in fact is more toughness, because the concept is, at least when we're being tough, it's out of love, because we love them. And I would say that is something which was inherited from slavery, may or may not have had its positive and negative reasons, meaning that there might have been, in slavery times, there might have been a really good reason to, for you to teach your kids a certain kind of deference, and to give them a certain kind of tough love, and to not be, too high on the praise. But I would say that more than it being a defense mechanism, it was learning what you had been taught by the overall system. This is how you deal with blacks, and we just internalized that and passed it down through our own behavior, because it's not the way. And I would say, the best example of that is that once it gets on the open field where we're all in it together, we look at people who are white and have quote-unquote leadership qualities in the same way that everybody else does. So if we look at the end product as being, this is leadership, this is what leadership qualities look like, then how in the world can we justify the way in which they develop those leadership qualities as opposed to the way in which we do? It's like expecting a rabbit to become a fox. If it's developed and raised in a way that produces a particular thing, that we say that's a fox, that's good, then how can we develop our kids differently and think that the outcome is going to produce anything other than a rabbit? So whether our intentions were good or not or whatever, we have to look at reality. Now the other part is, the obsession that many people, some of whom I really respect, have with money. Okay? Because I think this needs speaking to. Now the first thing is what I've been talking about is education, and what I'm talking about when I talk about self-confidence and how to go about raising our youth and educating them. That's one thing, because I believe education is political power. I believe it to the core. I don't think there is any other kind of political power outside of education. That is the foundation. It is the beginning and the end of political power, is education. And the education is achieved one way. You begin with praise and encouragement of your youth, and the rest just develops naturally by supporting them with learning, not just teaching them this, that, and the other. And so I heard someone talk about homeschooling. That is an insanely bad idea. You need to have people with knowledge teaching your kids. That should not be placed upon the backs of people who have other things to do. The goal, the purpose, the role which parents can play is the bottom of the base of education. Praise, encouragement, and demanding that of teachers. But teachers must have, to some extent, they must be able to praise and encourage. Well, that's really the role of the parent, and they need to demand that of the teacher. But more so from the teacher needs to be knowledgeable in their field. And I don't mean just in some one-sided way. I mean knowledgeable in their field, whatever it is. That's what you need. You need professionals. But those professionals have to meet that fundamental standard of being able to praise and encourage your kids. And they need to be professionals. Anything else will just not do. Having people who don't know anything and who are just trying to do their jobs and feed their kids, to place upon them, on their backs, to be able to educate their kids in a knowledgeable way, is just asking a little bit too much. It's not that they can't help, don't get me wrong, but that job, if you want it to be done correctly, needs to be done by professionals, people who know that business. And you set the standard for that. how that needs to happen, and you hold them accountable to that. And if they can't be held accountable to that, then they're not professionals. You don't need them. They'll do more harm than good. Because the first is praise and encouragement. If they can't do that, then the rest doesn't really matter. But the last part, that they be knowledgeable. If they aren't knowledgeable, then they're not professional. That's the core of it. They need to be knowledgeable in their field, and that just needs to be. Period. So, I wanted to clarify that as the education power part. Make that clear. So the money part is that, I'm just going to be blunt. If the white man makes the money because he controls it because he has the political power, he makes the money, he controls the money, then what the fuck is that going to do for you in terms of political power? I don't have anything against money. I think you need money. If you're going to live and you're living in the present, then you got to deal with the present. However, we do not exist totally in the present. We exist in the past and in the future as well. Because the present is gone like that. No matter how much we have our feet and our body in the present is continuously pushing us into the future, out of the past. So, we have to think in terms of political power, preparation, being prepared, having a plan, having a focus, because that gives us hope. And it not only gives us hope, it gives us life. It enables us to improve, because that's what you want to do. You don't want to go backwards. You want tomorrow or next year or the following year to be better than the one that you're living in. And you can't do that simply focused on the moment, because that's brutish. That is brutish. And that's the thing about money, is no matter how good your thinking is, if that is your sole focus, you can talk all the political rhetoric talk you want to. You might even have a very good brain for it. But if your primary focus is that you believe that the money is going to somehow translate into political power, you're mistaken. Because that is controlled by who it's controlled by. Whoever makes it controls it. And what controls the money is political power. If you don't have any, the money can be taken away like that. Or things can change like that, and your money is worthless. I think that the Jews during the Nazi period felt like their money was going to protect them, but it was just taken away. Because they did not have political power. And for all of their learning, I should say, they just marched along compliantly with the Nazis, thinking that, well, maybe it's just going to be the bad Jews that they get. Or they can't possibly get me because I serve the Kaiser. All these are real things that these people thought as they marched along and complied helplessly with the Nazis. Because times of stress and hardship, prosperity, and goodness are all based on political power. And when hardship time comes, you find out whether you have any or not. And if you don't, you best start thinking in terms of how to develop it. And money will not save you.